Okay, so here we are, Axis Empires. Spring, March, April turn, nothing much happened in January, February of the Axis turn. And I turned over the cards, kind of interesting here, diplomatic overtures for Japan. Pretty mellow. They're trying to avoid a war for some reason. And on the other side, the Germans took a demand Austria card, which this is about the right time to do it. In fact, it is the right time to do it, historically, but, that is kind of an aggressive card. Well, what comes up? First of all, with the diplomatic overtures, I don't remember how it happened. Cabinet crisis table ended up generating a border dispute, and it looks like there's a war with nationalist China. Now, whatever that means, I don't know if that is going to activate everyone, and I have to look into that. But the Japanese are ready to go into Hope at the very least, and they're not too dissatisfied with this, except they were going to make some demands. Their next card is already picked, I think. They were going to demand Inner Mongolia, and that's not going to help much. That's not going to be a useful card if they're fighting Hope at this point. Okay, but because I wanted to keep things kind of in alignment where I went over to see the Austrian thing, and then I was going to handle this, which seemed more complicated. Well, the Austrian situation, they ended up getting a very rare, their card, let me just show it. Their card shows that they only resist on a 1. The Axis has a +1 bonus on them, but the current victory point level negates that, making it a minus, negates that. So the die roll was fair, it was straight up, and that 1 did indeed harm them. So country resist. Well, made a check there, and they'd be Western Allied. They're affected by the Treaty of Locarno, and now from that, we're going to end up rolling on the international crisis table to see what the world ends up doing with this. And yes, I'm going to have to make more space if I have that. So let's see where this all goes. Okay, 2, military victory, 15.24. That sounds like the Germans successfully invaded. The Axis faction must eliminate 1 German armor step or 2 German infantry from any hexes on the map after removing them. It gets the ceded lands. So yeah, they're going to end up taking this. After the steps are removed, each faction must take any outbreak of war units it has in conditional events and put them in the delay box. I think all factions have mobilized for war. However, we're still in pre-war. The Allied factions are shocked into action by the German triumph. Okay, well, so right here at the Anschluss, it ends up not being a bloodless victory. And we'll see what the Germans have to do. I didn't realize it wasn't going to be setting up the Austrians and invading, so I set my Germans up on the border ready to attack, just like I would in World in Flames. I got to figure out what's going on with the Japanese, and I have to take the effects here into account. So after a bit of wrestling with the rules, and I can't say I'm too unpleased with it. Yes, it took some time, but I don't know how much cross-referencing would have helped there. A little bit, certainly. It would have saved about 10 minutes, but it took me about 40 minutes to fully understand what's going on. So, from what I understand, the Japanese have provoked limited war by that action. It didn't mean anything. Now, they've declared war on Hope, which means they're not currently at war with Hope anymore. Or they're at war with Hope. They're not at war with any of the other miners. But it's harder. Well, I don't know. It may have other influences. Basically, at their choosing, they can knock one off at a time as this goes, as long as no one's going to defend them. Now, it does throw the reserve unit into Hope, and when I looked, these reserve units have a little... sorry, not this. It's the Expeditionary Unit. Shit, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I'll have to find. But it reminded me. Oh yes, yes, and no. It threw the Expeditionary in there. Threw the reserve unit out of the box or whatever into the force pool. Now the reserve units have a little flag on the back of them. And remember a little bit while ago, said, the Philippines, they became a country. They get their own little flag. Well, although it's not explained in the setup, kind of implies that every neutral country should have its own little flag. So you can see I've added little flags for all these little neutral countries, and that'll help indicate that's a neutral country. And also over here in Europe, you can see them. You got Hungary, Poland. Austria doesn't have one because they've been annexed. And countries like France and Gansu, who have troops on the board, I'm a little iffy about their troops on the board situation. I don't understand why they have them, but they do, and I'll leave that there. I think it's maybe to express the fact that they get reserves through cards and are just not normal minor powers, so they're going to have their forces on the board. I didn't put one in Spain. I hunted down out of the separate bags I had for Turkey and Italy, but I didn't put one in Spain because, well, Spain's not really neutral right now. If you attack, I mean, first of all, it's obvious something's going on there, and if you attack it, it's treated kind of like a neutral. It all falls over to the other side. But right now, I don't feel like a flag expresses things properly at this point. I don't know. But I got the rest of them on there. There's one little annoying one. Is Sweden here has a misprinted unit on the back side of it. It is a Swedish unit. We got a couple that are dual flagged, where two countries kind of work together, and I don't understand how that works. For example, I can demand Norway as the Germans, or I can demand Denmark. Do I get Norway too? That'd be kind of cool. Because the invasion is kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, well, we'll keep moving. I am hitting the point where the cards are becoming a pain in terms of remembering what I've got. So the fact that I couldn't remember, did I discard the Navy program? And I did. So I could not have played it. You can only play 2 programs, I guess. 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. So that means a lot of naval reinforcements that would normally come available to Japan aren't going to be available to me. I'm going to be focusing so heavily on that Chinese war. Well, I feel like I'm incompetent at naval action, so, we'll try to do as much as we can on the ground. Yeah? Okay, we'll see. We'll see what that turns out as. One thing to note, though, take a look at how much bigger the card decks have become because of the Limited War. The Limited War is the big part of the game in terms of the amount of cards that it adds to the deck, at least in the Chinese theater. We'll see how that works out in the European side of things, but there's just a lot of options once you enter that Limited War period. So here we are, basically at the end of the March, April, spring turn into the April, May turn. Now, kind of a disadvantage here, especially with the Japanese entering a war, the mud's going to appear, and I got to see what effect that's going to have. But it can't be good, right? But they stumbled into this war not when they wanted it, and this is what happened. What cards did we see up afterwards? Well, for the Western forces, got Commonwealth rearmament and French rearmament, basically trying to catch up. It's obvious the world is not a happy place, and getting those military forces built up seems important. It's much worse for the Axis. There is no question. The Axis got a definite setback on the Austria, and I'm not so sure they wanted the war to start in the East either. they certainly were delaying it. Whether that was reasonable or not, I'm not sure. Over for the Russians, new 5-year plan over here, and they had to throw out the same kind of card, in this case the Red Navy, from the east that they did in the west. And Russian rearmament gave them a bunch of extra forces, including some armor, etc. They're actually developing quite a powerful little army out here. It doesn't look like much to World War II gamers, but these are each army units, each counter essentially. At least each of these big guys. These guys are pretty much core. And it's much, much larger than anything Germany has at this point. But Germany's actually beginning to grow as well, although the setback that they faced was kind of painful. But the thing is, the miners in the way are fairly large. They have decent sized armies that you can't just blow through. So actually the great powers in this are kind of weak, too weak to handle the miners around them right off. It would be tough, for example, for Germany to handle a Poland or a Czechoslovakia at this point. Russia probably could take Poland, but it would be painful for them. Plus, they're the warm and fuzzy Russians. Okay, let's move forward. And I got to roll all these delay boxes. A lot of new troops going to be showing up into the force pools in the near future. So, Japanese are about to do their invasion of Hopei. Moved my forces forward. Got a couple of units here, a couple of units here. Looks like 6-1 here, 4-1 here. I can throw the artillery or headquarters or whatever support into here. At 2 hexes, that's allowed because of the 2 hexes that's listed there to attack this. I'm just looking to gain a little bit of ground, but I'm going to expend one of my Air Force markers because I'm making a couple of attacks. I don't know how important it is, but I'm going to drop that there. That's the most likely place to resist, so that'll be a more valuable location to keep the marker for now. Now, at the beginning of next turn, that's going to get removed and dropped into the delay box, which is a bit of an expense, right? I mean, it could be several turns before I get that plane back. All the same, I want to break Hopei fairly fast so that I can get the advantages from it. Alright, so we're not allowed to have a blitz segment, so I can't play such a chit. I wouldn't have had the ability. There had to be a lightning bolt up here for me to play one of those. There's really not a lot else I can do here. Move this beachhead marker back where it belongs. So what I'm gonna manage is I'm just gonna do an attack. Now I'm looking when the conditional events happen. They happen down towards the end. Right, yeah. So I'm going to get some replacements at that point. But right now it's just a pretty simple combat operation, like in many other games. And I'm just going to calculate out my odds. Now right here, I have 6-1. Sounds like 6-1. That puts me on this table. There are some shifts though. I get one shift in my favor for the Air Force. And I get one against me for the mud, and I think one against me for the terrain, if I can find the terrain effects chart. I know it's here. Let's see. I've got a city or capital, so that's one against me. So I'm going to be dropped down from the pure 6-1 down to the 5-1, 4-1, whatever, over here. And I just roll a die. Get a result. Now a 1 is very good in this game. You want low results. I get a defender retreat 2 and an attrition loss for the defender. So the defender is going to lose his unit. And that doesn't go in the delay box because it's not a striped unit. So it'll be able to be rebuilt when the West gets production. Right now they don't have production. Until next turn for those minor countries. Now I'm allowed to advance. I'm not allowed to exploit because it wasn't a blitz attack. And with the mud there, I couldn't have done a blitz. Now this is 2, 4, 6. The shift is actually canceled out. I don't think a port gives one, so I may have a shift in my favor there. Port has no effect. So what do I have? I have a base 6-1. I have the Air Force adjacent, which cancels out the mud shift, and then I get a shift from my headquarters support. So I'll be on the big 9-1 table, and this will be pretty easy. I probably didn't need the Air Force for this. It's a defender retreat 3 and another casualty. And I advance. I'm not going to bring the Kwang Tung unit in there. He's not allowed to leave Manchukuo as far as I remember. And then this goes over here. And that's pretty much the Axis turn. I get some replacement points based on the card I have for the conditional events. That's about it. So the turn's finishing up, and oddly enough, well, the Allies didn't have a lot happen. No big shock there, right? They're getting these little detachment markers. I accidentally placed a colonial unit in Australia and realized they don't get that. They are a policy-affected country. So this is not, they don't get to mobilize that much. But on the Russian side, they had an interesting effect off their political events segment. They ended up getting a cabinet reshuffle. Now, I didn't realize what that would do. Actually, what showed up? The cabinet crisis table, and then that could cause who knows what. Well, it caused cabinet shuffle. That means the Japanese are down to a navy government again. That's not what they want. Their whole plan is on this army plan. Now, they've got coups and stuff like that they could play for it. They could also just ditch it and try to get a random event, a random side, which all might be okay because for the most part it affects their card play more than anything. But right now they lost the government that they wanted in place and that they're really planning for. One more thing that's going to happen before these guys are going to come on the board, obviously, go into the force pools. But before that happens, there's the seasonal victory phase. And I want to catch that here because things have changed a little bit since the last season. So first of all, Austria has fallen. That means the axis is, and I figured these tracks out, the axis is at +1 here, which means the marker goes here. Now, it doesn't flip sides. It stays on the Allied Crusade until it moves into the next box. Once it moves into this box, it'll become axis tied, and that can have some effects on things. And likewise, here, we see the Japanese have gained a space, so now this is moved forward, and it's in the same kind of position. You got to get it up to +3 to get that modifier early on. All right, I think that's all of them. We'll see where we go from there.